DougDoug, a maniac of a streamer notorious for stuff like beating Skyrim while thousands of cheese wheels spawn everywhere, recently took it upon himself to try hosting a session of Dungeons & Dragons. In his usual style, the game was filled with nonsense like bloodthirsty Oreo monsters, giant cannibalistic Roombas, and touch-starved Lego dragons. The party had to travel through 4 floors of Walmart with their useless companion Porky, who nobody liked and everyone had painfully crushed by the end of it. Things were coded to let random chat members take control and play as adventurers in the game, and every half hour, new players would be picked to play, letting their chat messages get read out by AI voices that fit their characters. Each could take up the mantle as the barbarian, bard, or wizard, each having abilities to help them survive the dungeon, and unique personalities and flaws to help everyone stay in character. And to make things easier to understand, Doug tried his best to change up D&D's rules so that people coming in who've never played the game could still have fun. Long-winded battles were still the beef of the game, but with less rules in the way, everyone could stay focused on being creative and telling a fun story. From start to finish, the 6-hour game was a trip, and definitely the most entertaining game of D&D I've caught in a long time. I rewatched the VOD 3 times, counting 4 while editing this video, giving me more time analyzing chat eat sentient Fruit Loops than most people clocked in for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Through this incessant eye for detail, I noticed a bunch of cool stuff chat kept trying to do, rules that were great, rules that everyone forgot about, and a bunch of other small details that could help Doug make his next game absolutely perfect. The first thing I noticed was how much fun chat was having by pulling things off the Walmart shelves. During a battle, Doug let players search for whatever they wanted that made sense to be in that aisle to grab and use as a weapon. But after battles, you only had one more search before he'd pull you up to the next floor. In the first room, taking place in the food aisle of Walmart, the barbarian squirted ketchup into an evil Dino Nugget's eyes, and the wizard poured milk all over a sentient Oreo demon. Stuff like this kept happening in every room, making for hilarious outcomes and being rewarded by Doug with higher chances for things to work. Although lots of stuff was grabbed, some of the strongest items were ones that could be used multiple times throughout the dungeon. A perfect example is the barbarian's dress, which gave a pretty strong armor bonus, and the wizard's nail gun that could stick ropes to the ceiling. Now, trying to search for one of these things during a fight was riskier because it took your whole action to do so, but if you managed to grab something really useful, it could be more than worth it. Since chat really enjoyed these mechanics, I'd encourage Doug to have his next game take place somewhere with just as much cool stuff to play around with, and for chat to take advantage by collecting the most useful items in the dungeon. Room 2 was a clothing aisle and had most of the combat taking place on floating platforms. Mannequins came to life to attack the party, and jumping between platforms had a chance to instantly kill anyone who rolled poorly. Now, with that in mind, let's bring up one of the barbarian's abilities real quick. Intimidating Presence forces every enemy to run away for an entire round. It's a once per stream ability, which means they wouldn't be able to use it again after that, but here's the thing, they didn't use this ability for the whole stream. This was the moment. If they popped it on like turn 2, all the mannequins would need to jump back over the platforms, maybe even killing a few in the process. Now you could easily blame Doug on this for making an ability nobody wanted to use or something like that, but to be fair, the problem stems from how live streaming works as a whole. With bigger streamers, it can often seem like they always have the same 10,000 viewers chilling in their chat at all times, but in reality, old people are constantly leaving and new people are coming in to watch. I've streamed a few times on occasion, and out of the 3,000 views the VOD had when it ended, only 200 people were ever watching at any given point. So knowing that, you can't expect every new person jumping in to be as mindful as the few people taking this as seriously as we are. Having the ability get used could have been cool to see though, and we'll figure out a solution to that later. And that's because this video is sponsored by Obijima, Tales from the Tall Grass. It's a brand new campaign setting for D&D 5e that's drawing inspiration from The Legend of Zelda, Studio Ghibli, and Adventure Time. Obijima is set to expand and explore on its inspirations with quirky monsters like rubble golems, sheep dragons, and my personal favorite, giant flying skeleton fish. But no world is without its danger, and if you're looking to stand a chance against even the weakest evil spirits, you'll need to gear up with Obijima's slew of new spells, magic items, and character options. The book's also launching with card decks tuned with brewing potions in mind. Expect to have your hands filled with ingredients as you mix everything together to create items perfect for exploring any terrain that tickles your fancy. The art style's stunning, and I'm so glad the designers knew exactly what they wanted this project to look like. You can check out the Kickstarter using the link down below. But with that said, let's get right back to the video. A regular feature in this dungeon were enemies that could leave hazardous terrain wherever they moved. In the food aisle, we had a hot pocket leaving a molten magma trail, and 2 floors up was a mop dripping soapy water. Although it would take a bit of coordination, the best strategy as a player is to run away and kite enemies so you don't get cornered by impassable terrain. Because slipping around in the hardware aisle had a player trip into the mouth of the giant Roomba and almost kill them immediately. It could have been so much deadlier though, though, because the enemies played like they weren't even aware they had this power. Every time, they'd stop moving the second they'd reach a party member and attack even if they had extra movement to spare. The Hot Pocket also spawned on the other side of the map, so that dude wasn't surrounding anyone anytime soon. Once again, would have been cool to see something where they run around and trap people, but ultimately things worked out in the player's favor here. Rolling back over to that Roomba, Doug showed off how deranged it was by having it sweep up and kill another enemy.
He moves over the microwave accidentally, and you hear a big clunking sound as the thing gets sucked up, and the microwave goes, "Ah! He did not mean to do that!" And you hear the washing machine go, "Oh, god damn it, Roomba! Stop eating our soldiers! This keeps happening!"
I think at that very moment, chat realized what they could do with this thing, but it's a shame none of the players in control thought that far ahead. The wizard even made an illusionary brick wall to trick the Roomba into going around it. Then Doug let a different wizard take over, and they forgot the wall was fake entirely, trapping them in the corner and nearly getting them killed in the process. This room was all about movement, avoiding slippery soap, and throwing enemies in front of the killer Roomba, but everyone did the exact opposite and stayed in one place the whole fight, tripped on soap, and got bored by the robot instead. Since there were no opportunity attacks in this version of D&D, it was much safer to move around without being bonked by enemies, and everyone in the party had ways to attack at a range, so kiting them would have worked incredibly well. They managed to escape by the skin of their teeth though, and made it up to the final room. Walter, the boss of the dungeon, and his Lego dragon were the final battle. With the power to spew molten hot Legos everywhere, this battle would be a dangerous fight. Now, Doug specifically ruled that the flaming Legos would only stick around for one turn, but the wizard wasted their action nailing ropes to the ceiling to try swinging over them. As usual, everyone in chat lost their mind, and when the flames disappeared, they were heartbroken. The bard tried seducing the dragon and failed miserably. Then through distracting the dragon with a seductive vulture and polymorphing it into Porky, they bought enough time to kill it. After that, Walter was a pushover, the Walmart collapsed, Porky died, and everyone lived happily ever after. Now, with the livestream summarized, let's take a look at each character's abilities, how things played out, and what we could change to spice things up. Now in this game, each player got 3 health, and whenever a monster would roll an attack that would beat your armor score, they'd deal 1 damage. So yeah, this is great and I wouldn't change it, but if we wanted to go a little more D&D and make the barbarian tankier, I'd give them an extra point of health. Now in terms of abilities, each class had something iconic they could use every turn, one they could use every floor, and a super ability they could use only once during the stream. Because we want to make sure everyone has the same amount of butt-kicking potential, let's compare things. We'll rate them on power, how often chat forgot they existed, and how creative they were being with them. To start, the barbarian got a reckless attack once every turn, which made them super strong but easy to hit. This one's just great because most enemies died in one hit and wouldn't be able to counterattack. Doug also let reckless attack work on basically any hostile action as well, making all the cool creative plans the barbarian had work way more often. Sadly, a few people piloting the barbarian forgot they could use reckless sometimes, but I don't think it was enough to warrant changing anything. Maybe just let it work on any dice roll that uses their muscles? It would still mostly be attacks and would help chat remember that the barbarian's value comes from strength. Now as the once per floor ability, extra attack is pretty straightforward. Basically, if the barbarian had some cool idea for an attack, they'd ask to use extra attack and just attempt it twice. A great example would be throwing Porky multiple times whenever the first throw would miss. Chat sorta had a hard time remembering if this ability was used or not since it doesn't do anything flashy, and that's an issue because of the stuff we already talked about and because barbarians are just mundane warriors. There's really no way to make it any flashier, and since offering handicap access to viewers is a top priority, we probably need to switch this out with something else. Since the barbarian players really enjoyed all the creative ways the food and appliances were being used to kill everything, I could see an improvised weapon ability being fun, letting them get bonuses for shooting ketchup everywhere. Then for the once per stream ability, we had intimidating presence. This was the one that chat didn't even use during the game, so erring on their short-term memory, I'd recommend Doug put a button or something on the screen that says if a character's daily has been used yet. That, or get rid of the once per stream abilities entirely, because whenever someone would use them, chat would get angry and ride for a veto. Most people felt like the abilities could be better used elsewhere, and that the player in control was wasting it. That's a bit too much responsibility for any one player, so maybe just make them once per floor abilities instead. Tone the power down a bit, you'd be good, and chat would see the whole lot less. Now the bard's a simple one to go over. Vicious Mockery was used almost every turn to no surprise by anyone. Doug would give the spell a bonus if the bard player could come up with some sick burns to go alongside casting it, which made it even stronger. Then to add icing to the cake, the PowerPoint even said it could make enemies weaker, but Doug kind of forgot about that. The way it worked during stream was great though, and everyone had fun using it, so I'd say this one's fine. Cure Wounds was a straightforward straightforward ability, but felt mandatory to use sometimes. Nobody likes being the heal bot, so maybe we could make it a little more fun. Get him to do a rhyme or something, maybe say something inspirational, anything more than just you heal, that's it. Motivational speech was used once at the start of the game and never used again, which is strange because of how creative the bard could have been with it. I guess bard players were having more fun mocking everyone than inspiring others, but the ability is perfectly fine. Then suggestion as the once per stream ability is incredibly strong, because you could completely take control of a boss enemy depending on what you say. Suggest that they become your ally and join you on the quest to defeat Walter and the rest of his sentient warehouse minions. If it works, you basically just got yourself an extra party member. Here's the thing though, when the bard tried to do this with Porky, Doug only let it last until the end of the current floor. So I'm gonna hope the description gets changed to clarify that, and for bard players to try casting it early in a fight to get the most value. And finally, we have the wizard. I'm just gonna say it now, Ray of Frost was really mediocre. It's just a little blast of ice, so chat couldn't do much to make it more fun besides say something funny while casting it. The slow effect didn't matter because most enemies died in one hit, and it was also pretty vague as to how slow it made people and for how long. Ray of Frost was probably the weakest, least fun, and most uncreative ability out of the roster. So I'd recommend it get swapped out for something cooler next game, like a creation ability to make small items like pipe bombs, or maybe even a conjure animal spell to summon vicious chihuahuas. Magic missiles next, and was their once per floor ability. This one too was pretty boring. A guaranteed hit was clutch on a few occasions, but it's a pretty uncreative spell, all things considered, and the lack of any rolls removes any tension. And looking through, I don't think the wizard really needs any direct damaging spells to be fun to play. So why don't we just also remove magic missile entirely and swap it out for one of my earlier spell ideas, or maybe even teleporting? It could give you so many more options to have fun, and Doug so many more ways to hilariously describe it. Major Image is the next once per floor. It's a perfect ability for how chat likes to play. There's an infinite number of illusions you can make up, pairing perfectly with the nonsense of chat and all the crazy stuff they could come up with. I would just say to add a little bit more detail, like what the roll to notice the illusion's fake would be, and we'd be good to go. Then finally, Polymorph was the once per stream ability and had the most confusion around it. Everyone kept trying to turn the other party members into animals, and then the enemies into things that weren't animals, and then objects into animals, which the spell clearly stated it wasn't designed for. It's strong, don't get me wrong, but maybe let the wizard at least cast it on themselves and don't restrict what they can turn into. Doug did an incredible job setting this game up to be as interactive as possible, and it really shows. I wasn't bored for a second, everyone stayed in character the whole way through, and for a game like D&D, combat ran surprisingly smooth. If Doug winds up watching this, with just a few tweaks, I'm sure the next session will be, in his own words, the best D&D session of our lives. Quite the contrary, I've been Blaine Simple, and I'll see you all in the next video.